and welcome back to LEC Winter for the last week of regular season best of ones, and I know you're all very excited about not seeing any again. The LEC has been wild so far. Fnatic, KC and Koi already chilling in the playoffs waiting room. Vitality continues to walk the thin line between int and entertainment, and BDS is wrestling some, let's call them intrusive thoughts. And Camilo, he's still smiling. No, seriously though, he hasn't stopped smiling since week 1. Today in Ready Check, we're discussing how to level up as a region. Bwipo has some strong words about lifting his league, so let's see what we think on this side of the Atlantic. And maybe also Yonkos has something to add. I'm Laure, I will be your host for the day, joined by GB. And look, we know leagues players don't take showers, but luckily for us, our guest for the weekend is washed. Welcome, Odomne. I'm sorry.
Okay, whatever is happening to this knot is because of you.
No!
All your fault.
Why are you taking it all on the poor plushie? And your most played champion, if I may say.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is maybe one of my regrets to play Nar so much, so that's why he had. Yeah, I was just looking for a little excuse to just.
I decline all responsibility for this guy's
really
behavior.
should take it, but it's fine.
2 plushies, but hey, nice to have you back. How have you been?
It's been great watching LEC from the sidelines.
Yeah.
Was a delightful experience because League has been entertaining over here in LEC. I have enjoyed it thoroughly. I do like the fact that we have a lot more top teams in the sense where before the middle of the pack was the more competitive one, but now with G2 sucking for the first time.
Oh my god.
It's the first time they suck, you know, so it's great to have it. With G2 sucking and MDK and K-Corp doing, or MKOI, sorry, and K-Corp being so good, it is a refreshing breath upon our league.
I really do agree, but I feel so, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth that the league got competitive, not because they matched up against the level that G2 had at the time, but they had to suck and then they got better. So it kind of felt like a little bit of a freebie.
He's gonna.
Well, at the same time, it is also because everyone before was always tuning in on LEC and it's like, oh, G2 is the greatest again for the 7th year straight. And right now also it contributes to the hype of the league right now that G2 is not doing so well. So everyone's just a lot more excited.
A lot of things are changing. A lot of dynamics are changing. A lot of teams are experimenting on stuff. And I know that we opened the jar of streaming scrims, rather, last week. We've talked about this statement that Bwipo said in LTA North. We've asked Elioya what he thought about it. TLDR, if you missed it, FlyQuest wants to stream their scrims. A hot topic right now, I feel, on social media. So for a bit of refresher, if you haven't watched PGL last week, let's check out what Elioya had to say about this. I love the advertisement. But it's dividing opinions, honestly. And when we ask our LEC player, LEC jungler, what he thought of this, the answer was quite clear. So let's check out what Elioya said last week. It is coming.
I mean, I could see
in a few minutes.
the league itself getting better, but you're also, I think you're giving away too much information. I'm a bit skeptical about this. I don't think if you want to perform at your highest level, it's something you should aim for, because obviously teams already know how you're going to play, but there is tendencies in your comms, in your way of saying things, like you might just give away more things than you don't need to. So yeah, I'm skeptical on this. Yeah. So I don't think it would be great because you're giving away too much of, of how you play, of how you see the game. I think that would give an advantage to the enemy team. So he can stream his games.
He can stream his games. That's going to help you maybe later.
Yeah, I'll watch the streams happily. I don't think I'm doing it. So yeah.
Okay, maybe that's finally how we get better than the LTA. But no, in all seriousness, what do you guys think of this? The proposal from Bwipo to make the league better, and what Yoya had to say to this?
I mean, as a viewer myself, it's like, I think it's, I still don't think my full opinion on it is completely clear, but I'm trying to see it from different angles. You know, as a viewer, if they were streaming, I would absolutely watch them. Like, I've been loving watching the Los Ratones scrim. I feel like if I got to see it at a team that was at a higher level, I would love that. From the perspective of you scrimming and giving away too much, like, I think if you're the best team in the league, which FlyQuest obviously think they are, I think they obviously know what they want with this, right? They want to level up the league. But if you're one of the worst teams and you're already struggling and you're scrimming away from the public that you're struggling and you're feeling the pressure, not just from the official games or any other things, like, I think there's too many dynamics where some teams just don't benefit from it at all. And I think FlyQuest, they're in a position where right now they feel like the best, they have the confidence, but not all teams are going to have that. And I think that makes it very difficult for them to say they want to start scrimming.
It's a thin line, honestly.
It is a double-edged sword because if you're at the top, you don't really get much from, you know, the information you get from other teams, you're going to level up other teams by giving them access to your systems, to how you implement them, maybe how communication goes, the way you draft before each game, and how you approach it. But it is a little bit of a throwback to what G2 did when they started leaking the scrims, because at first we were
leaking scrims, not really. Like,
well,
to put a bit of context here,
no,
Romain last year started publishing scrim results after the split ended. And he did this in a way to motivate the league to stop first cancelling scrims. But it helped.
It worked because if we remember, the first time he posted, there was a lot of cancels. Pretty much no team was going through a full year without canceling. And then by the end, after 1 or 2 splits of having or promoting this culture where if you're canceling scrims, then G2 is going to leak it, and then the community is going to go on fire towards you. Teams stopped canceling scrims, and then it leveled up. And at first, there was this wall that you're hitting. The community was like, well, you can't really be doing this. But it did level up the region. And right now, we might be at exactly the same point or exactly the same position where you're like, OK, well, you're showing teams the way you approach this system. And by the teams having access to these sorts of systems and implementing themselves, they're going to become a better opponent for you. It's going to be harder for them to. It's going to be harder for you to just outplay them because they know how you think. And indirectly, it's going to start leveling you up.
But I also feel like, I think a lot of people are tunneling on the, streaming everything to make it better, and I think that's a fair point. But if the end goal is just to make the league better, I think there's better ways you can also do that, where you're just like, well, I mean, what if they just met up actually after scrims? And like, if you're going to an international with specific teams, I don't know how it works in Europe, but I feel like it's just one of those things where you can talk about what you feel like is the meta, because most people they will come with different meta reads from the different bubbles. People could exchange what bubbles feels like. They could have those conversations. You wouldn't necessarily have to stream it, right? I feel like there's still ways where you can, like, if you want to communicate with each other, but then that's literally also just giving away what you currently know, right? So I think it's a tough conversation, and honestly, I don't know, because I'm not on the team side, so it's really difficult for me to have that opinion. On how
lucky
I
for you,
feel.
I was on the team side.
Well, let's hear it then.
Well, at Worlds, there was always this tradition that as late as the tournament goes, the more teams start working together, because you start figuring out the meta. You kind of talk about whatever your issues are, what the bubbles are for each scrim, because usually you get these scrim bubbles, and then your priorities go all over the place.
What is late in the tournament? Like, how late are we talking here?
It's pretty much second week of group stage, because EU always goes out early recently, and it sucks. But I think this conversation about the strats and everything makes a lot more sense, because at the same time, you do have access to these scrims, right? In an ideal world, you do have access to these scrims. But even when you review T1 games, you see what the best play is. But the problem is with all of these teams, especially the teams that are lacking in strategy and direction, is creating these sorts of systems where you can replicate them in-game. And having access to these scrims and seeing other teams, how they create these systems, I don't really think it helps you so much, because you need to have your own personal approach that works for your staff and for your players.
We asked Jankos as well, who's been around the league for a long time, what he thought about this. Let's check out what he had to say, actually.
How could that potentially impact LEC? Well, streaming scrims potentially would raise the level of the league higher, as if teams like G2, Fnatic, GX, KC, MKOI would scrim each other, people would be watching. Teams like Rogue, for example, or teams like Team Heretics or other teams would definitely be watching and taking notes. That way, potentially over a long period of time, yeah, sure, maybe G2 wouldn't win like they did last year, but at least the level of the league would potentially rise, and because of that, we will have more average teams, like from bad teams to average, from average to good, and that would mean LEC could do better internationally. LEC could be stronger. Then again, though, if you go to Worlds or if you go to MSI, do you really want to stream your scrims? Do you really want to show to all the regions what you play? We are going back to the subject of leaking every pig, leaking every strat. So I think it could potentially make the region better, as the bad teams could learn from the good teams how good teams operate. But at the same time, I feel like if you go to international competitions, you really want to hide the strats. You want to pull off a Vayne mid lane out of nowhere. You want to perform a Shenjang out of nowhere, or maybe a Nunu, like Inspired did at Worlds, right? So I feel like these kind of strats need to be hidden. You need to surprise your opponents with these picks. So not every stream can be scrimmed. Not every scrim can be streamed.
Wise words from Jankos, who's keeping up with the entertainment here. But I think he's opening a question that is really, really interesting. What are you going to do when you reach international? So for me, it's not only a reason and a way for you guys to get better within your league, but I also feel like it's a way to make the league more entertaining. At least that's what Jankos thought on the second question we asked him. So let's check it out.
Hey everybody. I think streaming scrims could be quite interesting from perspective of a player. I feel like that way you could potentially grow your branding, you could potentially get a bigger income over the month, right, as you are streaming. You would pump out more content for the viewers. So from a selfish point of the player, could be beneficial. Also, as some players are labeled as chokers, I feel like practicing in environment where people would already be watching you and you could get used to the external pressure of viewers watching, even in scrims, could impact players quite positively when they go on stage and there is that external pressure of people watching. So I do think there are some upside of streaming scrims. Also, I do think there are some downsides. Of course, you are teaching your opponents how to play the game, which long term could be good for the region, but you know, for the best teams, not always the best if you want to win only domestically. Besides it, you are leaking all of your strats. I think that leaking all of your strats is a better reason, since you can't really hide anything. If all the streams are scrimmed, people know what you prepare, people know what you want to play. So unless you want to surprise them and first time something, it'll be quite difficult to hide any tactics.
Jankos fully embracing his content creator cap here, but I feel like he's he's bringing up interesting points in the sense that, well, people are gonna wanna watch this ultimately, and I love the choker factor because indeed, if your streams are, I don't know, for me it can make some players better or at least be seen in a different light.
I still think it's a double-edged sword because, okay, imagine you walk up into a scrim, it's streamed, you stomp everyone, you go on stage, you choke, and then it further accentuates the narrative that you might be choking because, oh, everyone's like, oh, he was playing good in scrims, but he's going on stage and he's still choking. So it doesn't really help. I think the point is about moderation, though, because as he said, even when you rock up to an MSI, to an international tournament, the fact that you might be wanting to hide strats, which happened until now with the Nunu pick at Worlds that inspired Pullout, and it was great. I don't think Asian teams really need to watch our scrims to beat the life out of us, which is kind of sad, you know. But it is a fair argument that in a fairy tale, when we're a little bit better, if we walk up to Worlds and they get access to all of our scrims and our strats, is gonna be a little bit, you know, disheartening for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a fan perspective, even when I'm seeing like how people feel about Los Ratones, like I think it's the closest that fans at the moment get to feel like what it is to be part of a team, and I think that breeds a way bigger fan culture for said team as well, because they're there for all the moments, they're there for the practice, they're there for the pre-game, they're there for, well, just the content in general. So I do see from a fan perspective why that feels so good.
But would you say that maybe the fans just want more content from their favorite teams then, instead of?
I mean, I absolutely think so. But I mean, it's a double-edged sword because, like, back in our day, you know, content would go hard. Yeah, I mean, I started in season 2, season 3, right? But YouTube for League back then was going crazy. Like, you'd easily have millions of views on some YouTube videos, even with some teams. Like TSM was huge back then for a reason.
We would see them screaming CLG and stuff like this. So those were when in the golden days. That's why everyone was so hyped about it.
I never actually saw them. Like, the only thing I cared for was just like the content anyone would pay out. Diaries burning down the microwave to burn down the house, like all these things. And those videos were crazy back then. And even if teams put out that content now, I don't think there's the same exposure for it. Like, I still look at views from some teams, and even G2 as a team, like if you take a look at the most recent ones and we go back, like there's obviously a difference if that's the conversation we're going down.
Kedro was talking about the fact, and Wipo was as well, that they should do this for 2 blocks a week. A block is a set of 3 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, nowadays they do.
Nowadays,
they
but
do
yeah,
5 games.
Debatable, but that you don't actually do this all week, and that actually you could start your week and just actually ramp it up and just close your stream as the week goes, but that the first scrim blocks of the week could be open for the audience to see. That's an alternative. Soaz had a completely different view on this. It's actually interesting when you consider the story between Soaz and Wipo. But yeah, for him, it's just going to make everything worse. For him, it's just something that can work for streamer teams, and it would just show that the league is dying and that we need people to care. I don't know what you think about this, guys, because I actually think it makes sense for a league that NLC, for a team like Los Ratones, but I don't actually see this working in the long run for us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think on the the streaming part, if you're a team that's doing it, I mean, it's a hard conversation, right? Because it is FlyQuest that started saying it themselves, which is one of the best teams. Had it been one of the worst teams who said, we're only losing because you guys aren't showing us our practice, like, I mean, that obviously would have been a very different conversation. But I mean, I think, once again, it'll come down to team to team.
Yeah.
I think Odo's point as well with, like, if you're struggling and if you, like, you can ramp it up, maybe that's easier. But I think it's a fun conversation. And as I said earlier, like, I think it's just going to vary.
For me, it also reminisces me a little bit of the Champions Queue situation where everyone is so hyped, the community is trying to push really hard, and then is it really something that is going to be super beneficial for everyone, or is it just everyone acting on FOMO really hard? We're just like, okay, we need to push on this, and then the hype kind of dies after 2, 3, 4 weeks. I think it's just something new. I feel like if it's implemented properly, it would be helping the league overall. But I'm not 100% sold on it.
Yeah, TBD, and we'll see in the future. I actually want to see how it's going to pan out over on the other side of the Atlantic. I don't think the LEC is ready for this, though. What the LEC is ready for, though, is sending new teams in playoffs. Because we sent 3 teams already last week. Movistar Koi, Fnatic, and KC are already locked in. Who's the strongest one of them?
That's a great question. I'm going to probably go with a gut feeling of Fnatic right now.
All right.
But you can have that opinion if you want to, Odo. But I think Fnatic is looking sick right now. And I mean, the glimpses I saw of Upset and Mickey on the Kalista and Rel, that was something I hadn't seen in a long time, and it really gave me hope for their performance this split.
GB is just so disappointing that for the 15th year straight, we're still riding the Fnatic hype train, when in reality, we should be riding the Movistar Koi hype train, because they have Jojo, and he's slotting in like a glove. He is bringing in a lot of these, the little voice in the back of your head that I feel like every team needs, and Movistar was also lacking a lot. Okay, you need a yapper in comms.
All right.
Okay.
You need at least 1 yapper. If you have 2 yappers, a bit too much, okay? 2 yappers, too much, but 1 yapper is great. And then Jojo is doing this exceptionally, because I've been seeing in what's it called? In Ready, not Ready Check. We are doing Ready Check. In Mic Check,
yes.
in Mic Check, he is talking a lot passively on what he wants to do. I want to do this. I want to walk here. I want to do this. And with the pairing of Elioya and Alvaro, I feel like this is exactly what Movistar Koi needed to level up from their previous year.
No, I will agree. I think the top right now, the top 3 is fantastic to watch, and I agree with the MKoi point. I also think, like, speaking of bot lane synergy that I was on earlier, Casey's has been on point. I mean, it's been ages since I saw Takuma perform. Like, last time I did see that, when he was playing EMEA Masters with Kalis, and they're back together, making it work. And, I mean, that's just them. I think if you look at Vladdy's performance, we spoke a little bit about him last year. You have to speak about him this year, because he's been incredible.
Would Fnatic be the most complete team then when it comes to what they've been showing us in draft, in game, and the execution of it?
I would say so. Even though I was on the Movistar Koi hype train, I do think that Fnatic is probably the most adaptive team in terms of the draft that they're playing, because even early on when they played against G2, when we saw against the Atakan, their comp that was going on was really great. They were holding zones very, very well. Even now, we see they're starting Atakan, and usually this is where teams are throwing. But right now, as you can see, everyone is pressing S. G2 is forced to walk forward because their comp is so low range, and no one on Fnatic is in danger right now. Azir and Maokai are just holding the zones of control so well, and they're just wiping them out. And right now, in a meta where everyone is playing ranged, at the same time, they're probably the only team that have been playing Kalista really well, because Upset has been doing wonderful things on Kalista, and even with their other engaged comp. I think we saw against Rogue where they pulled the rabbit out of the hat with oh, never mind, we're talking about this one, but it is great because they're playing unconventional. They're looking for traps with vision. Kalista is just jumping forward, dodging all the skill shots, and this is the sort of Fnatic that we want to see from Upset.
Wow, Odo, it kind of sounds to me like you're describing the best team in the league right now with all these positive things you had to say about
He just really doesn't want to say it.
I'm just filling a quota, you know, because every week you rock up to the LEC and you need to talk about Fnatic because this is what drives engagement, GB. That's how it works.
Is it the fact that it drives engagement or the fact that they're actually looking really good right now?
All right, we've talked about the good. Let's talk about the bad and the ugly, rather. The team's fighting for spots. Starting with... Who do you want to start with, actually? Let's take a look at the schedules.
Yeah, because I was actually going to say, one of the things I really want to look at least in the beginning, would be one of the teams towards the bottom. I don't know if that Telestrator is currently active, because you're still looking at us, but I'm sure
it will be
it'll come
active.
up. It's the schedule right now of Team Heretics that I would actually like to look at, because I think they've actually been punching up a bit above their weight so far. Well, we saw that Rogue win against Rogue at the start of their career, but I still think when it comes to fighting the middle team and upwards, they're having a hard time doing it. So I retract my statement of saying they're punching up. I think, though, they're going to have to do it if they want to make it into the top 8 definitively, because they're going up against MKOI. Vitality is kind of beatable on a good day, and then G2. So I think that's a rough matchup to go through.
It is rough because they might just be getting punched down by the big boys with KOI and G2, because Heretics has been looking a little bit shaky. Reminds me a little bit of Splice back in the day where they're just winning by...
Your Splice?
That Splice.
Oh.
I mean, personal experience. You know, I had dark times where I was playing 50-minute games and we would all be getting Gathering Storm and be like waiting for the power spike to kick in, you know.
Yeah, but speaking of your former teams, I also think Rogue is in a tough spot where they only on paper maybe have one good matchup. You see it behind it, like they're going up against G2. SK should be doable. I say should, you never know. And then MKOI, I'm going to pass this over to you. You still know how to use that, right?
Yeah, I know.
That's the thing. For most of the teams who are struggling right now, I feel like they don't have the easiest schedule. Now, you want to be able to beat all teams if you want to advance. But
I do think that right now BDS probably has one of the easier schedules because...
All right, let's take a look at it.
Yeah, because BDS, I wanted to look at them because I do think that they're a team that is very interesting because... They're the team that has been underperforming because when we saw Irrelevant walk up to BDS, everyone was a little bit more hyped. They still had Ice, Nuke was great, you know, they changed the jungler. But it hasn't been working, but at least this week they have an accessible schedule, I think, with SK, GX, and K-Corp. Arguably, K-Corp is the hardest one. GX, now is the perfect time for BDS to show that if they want to punch up their weight and secure, you know, middle of the pack and be a contender and maybe bounce back from their poor showing, this is probably going to be the week.
But this is just such a good ramp up as well. You start out with what should be an easy matchup against SK, that's the confidence booster. You're going up against GX, okay, that's a step above, and then KC a little step above again.
A little miracle
so
run,
yeah,
you know?
actually you're going up there as well. But I think BDS has been so interesting to watch because they still do things well, and then they decide to say, you know what, we don't want to do that anymore, and then they just start making way too many plays at the same time. Like, I've seen too many times where they're ahead, and suddenly they just think, well, let's dive bot while we're going up towards top lane at the same time, or if we're doing Herald, let's make another play. They're just trying too many things at the same time, and they can make it a lot more simple.
I have a feeling that teams just get bored at some point.
Yeah, for me this is intrusive thoughts. Like, right now, everything is going so well, they're vibing, and all of a sudden, the Varus not only flashes forward, but then starts clicking forward, and all of a sudden, this game that was completely free win, that they pulled back, and they really deserve this win, they just lose because the little tiny voice in their head was like, do it.
I would say that game was a lot more stressful than some of the other games as well, where I thought, because that was a rough one. That was a hard opponent too.
It was, but the thing that was stressing me the most was that I knew that it was going to happen. I was like, it's too good to be true that they're just going to take the free win. I was like, it's the freest win, and it's going to be free. And then all of a sudden, I was like, and then it's lost.
Have to do
and
it.
Then the pressure.
Another team that I think, so fighting intrusive thoughts more than fighting opponents on the Rift for BDS. What about Vitality?
I'll put them in.
Vitality is like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I feel. You never know what you're going to have.
That's a very good way of putting it. I think that's perfect. I think Vitality, to me, right now, is the perfect middle of the pack team.
All right.
Like, they're beating the teams below them, and they're struggling a bit with the ones above them. And I think just they're a bit flippy right now. But I think in general, we're seeing improvements from them. I definitely think their week 2 was a lot stronger than their week 1. And I mean, hopefully they can continue that ramp up. They should be, I say should, because we've seen teams make it past at like 2 wins going into playoffs. But 3 is not safe yet. So 1 more victory, I mean, it's not confirmed yet, but it should be close.
For me, pick middle of the pack is, yeah, as you said, Vitality. But that's just because, you know, when you flip a coin and it's 50-50, you get good Healy that's going to win the game. You get bad Healy that is going to maybe make it a little bit worse. But with Linkas and Chaik being actually stable and really good this year,
you slept on Naknako? You're not putting him in the conversation?
I can't just praise everyone because you can't just go and be like, okay, this analyst is just praising everyone, so he's friends with everyone.
Okay,
I need to pick 2 favorites, you know, and my favorites are Linkas and Chaik. They have been doing really good.
Are they actually living and dying by the bot lane?
I mean,
is it actually what's going on?
Yes.
The one game, when was the game when Chaik played? That was against BDS. They didn't win and live. They didn't live and win by live and die. There we go. They didn't live and die by that play in bot lane. They had Chaik on the Talia. That was pretty much outperforming Nuke when.
Yeah, he was doing really well. But at the same time, Healy had a great game that game.
Yeah. I think
you can leave the narrative there. It's fine.
Before we jump on to the first game, SK BDS is going to be our opening match of the week. Quick take on this one. Do you actually think that SK can pull it together.
I mean, they
I
have
want
to
to
win.
say it makes
Nothing's in their
something
own
happen.
hands anymore. If they lose this one, it is rough. They have to win this one. I don't think it's going to happen, but they have to.
We'll see what happens. A lot of things can change within a week. We'll see if that's the case. Let's send it over to Ginny, who's sitting by the Marriott Bonvoy check-in with owner.
Thank you so much, Laure. Ginny here, and I am joined with owner from SK. Let's talk about this game that you have coming up. Let's talk about the whole week that you have coming up. Let's talk about the LEC in general. It's been a little bit difficult for you guys, and this is genuinely the do and die moment. How do you mentally prepare a team for that?
I mean, right now we are struggling because we feel a bit disconnected in-game. But we are trying to get to know each other even more outside the game. We are trying to do activities together, like playing board games. Like yesterday, for example, we have a really nice time as a team. And try to make the players feeling more connected to each other, because that's, for me at least, the most important thing, that they don't lose that, more when you are losing, of course. And yeah, we are all at this point right now a bit disappointed, but we are hard working on it. We are mentally prepared to actually go for this weekend with a lot of energy. We have a lot of drafts prepared. We have a lot of options to play, and we are good.
I'm looking forward to it. Your first game is going to be against Rogue, and you touched upon a little bit that you are disappointed in a sense, and I can totally understand that. When it comes to going up against an opponent who's not necessarily in the top rankings, but more closer towards where you're sitting, does that maybe mentally make it a little bit easier?
Not really, because at the end, for us at least, the same is the game. It's on us. I think we had really good games into the top teams too, and then we lose it. Like we throw games against Giants, we throw games against G2, for example, and we are aware of it. We know that it's on us, not on the rest, and we are working exactly on that. That we make sure that we have a plan, that everything is clear, and then through that we go through into the win.
I mean, I'm assuming as well, like as a coach's perspective, you have this plan, you have this game idea that you're approaching it with. But then once the players are actually in the game, they're kind of like left on their own. So do you have any words of wisdom that you share with them before they head in? Like, don't do that.
I mean, I will say that, let's say we are being really aggro sometimes in the game, and we are not respecting some control of the areas that we should respect. So I'm trying to tell them, like, please, guys, before we go into the game, breathe, think about what are we doing, what is the next plan. Try to help each other in game, don't discuss. Try to always words of affirmation to each of you. What are the summoners? Everything make it easier, and through that, like, I feel like they join more focus into that. So yeah, I would say.
That's like a good motivational speech. Thank you for your time, for the interview.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We are ready to head over to our casters. So Hysterics and Dagda, take it away.